Hey, Terry Hodgkinson Sifu, how are you today? Just thought I'd do a little bit on my current grading system here at Chung Martial Arts. This is just for the students that I teach in person in the traditional training program. They've been training with me for quite some years now after I sold my professional schools. In my professional schools, I had a more extensive grading system. It followed a color scheme of multiple different colors starting from white going to yellow, orange, purple, red, green, blue, brown, black, and then of course into the degrees. But in between the color rankings, which we use sashes, there were stripes. And sometimes at the green, blue, brown, and black, there were actual levels that had to be achieved and stripes that were in between each level. So it was quite complex, and it was designed that way for a reason, because when you have 100 or 200 students at a time, there's different personalities, and you need to keep people motivated. And a lot of people in this day and age, the majority of people in this day and age are motivated by awards or some sort of recognition that they're moving up, and that would be the stripes and the colored sash system. Today, I do it a little different because, well, it's more of a close-knit group that I teach informally, and we're really here just to train for the results that you feel that you get internally, that you actually notice yourself. And this is what keeps my students going today, not so much the outside recognition, although, I know a lot of people enjoy that. And at some point, I may bring that back to a larger market if I'm going to cater to that. But right now, if you were to train with me in the traditional training, there's 4 sashes. And those 4 sashes would be, one is green. And green, the seasonal representation of green would be spring, because everything in the spring is growing, it's new, it's fresh, and this is exactly like the curriculum that you would learn at the green sash level. It's new, it's fresh, sometimes daunting, sometimes challenging. Well, a lot of the times challenging, actually. And sometimes you can be somewhat afraid of some of the things that you have to learn or do or accomplish in the different levels that you would, achieve, or I should say principal modalities that you would be practicing. It can be, there's a lot to it, and a lot of people tend to lose faith and give up and not train because it's too much. Well, my suggestion would be to continue, because just like a tree or a flower or something coming up in the springtime, it faces a lot of challenges, but if you stick with it, you grow strong and your roots grow deep. So you have to have courage. The next sash is black. And black, the difference in these sashes can be a decade. It sounds really strange, I know, in this day and age, a whole decade to train before you actually change the color of your sash, but it's true. And the seasonal representation of this sash would be summer. You've had a long time to really work on your basics, and you're enjoying them now. And with this level comes a great friend, which is clarity. You have a lot more clarity inside and out in relation to what you're doing in the martial arts. But while this is a friend, it can also be one of your biggest enemies, because clarity also brings with it sometimes the sense of all-knowing. People get on this sort of trip where it's like, well, I see it all now, I understand it all now, there's really not much more to learn, there's really not much more to do. Of course, that's the furthest thing from the truth. Just because you've gained a level of clarity and you understand some of the aspects of the principle training better, and perhaps the philosophy and how it applies to you and others in the world and the meaning of life, it's great to have that understanding and that wisdom, but it certainly doesn't mean that your training is over, if you want to continue, that is. So with clarity, you need to have duration, you need to have discipline to stick with it and to continue to train. And when that happens over a duration of time, it could be 8 years, it could be 10 years, it just really depends on how much you actually achieve within the time frame. Then your sash would change from black to red. And red, the seasonal representation of that would be fall. And this is where you really get to reap the rewards of what you planted in the spring and what you enjoyed in the summer as you nurtured it. And now you get to harvest, and you have a lot of things that you're able to use and apply. And things that you've learned in the martial arts physically, but also mentally and emotionally as well. And one of the biggest obstacles at this level is the feeling of power, getting immersed into power. And I've seen far too many people get lost in that and have ego trips. And, I've even had a few teachers in the past who get off on ego trips and they think that they're God's gift to the martial arts. And, really, they're human beings. They get up in the morning and put their pants on the same way all the rest of us do and continue on their way. So, a couple of the attributes that you want to embody at this level of training is, of course, modesty and, of course, gentleness with yourself, but with others and just with life in general, and use that power for good things. Use your inner strength for good things. Doesn't mean that you're always going to be the most humblest and mannered person. Life is life, and there are times where you might not be the most gentlest person, but on the most part, you want to do your best to maintain that. And then, of course, the last sash in the system here of the traditional training is white. And white is representative of winter. And this is when things come, past their fruition, and now it's time for them to make a transition and move into a whole different cycle. And this is what happens with us as well. We've spent a lifetime of training, mind, body, emotions, intellect, soul, everything that we could possibly train in the martial arts. And hopefully over your period of time, over your lifetime, you set in place a way to pass that on. Whether you're a teacher or whether you're a writer or whether you're doing videos, I don't know what it is, but if you've achieved that much wisdom and that much curriculum, you want to be able to set up some sort of way to leave it for, the next generations coming up. Not that it would ever disappear. I mean, other people would train and most likely develop to that level of knowledge, but it would make it easier in some respects for some people who are perhaps wanting to learn and follow a similar path as you, if it's somehow in place that somebody else is teaching it, or it's in a format that they can learn from. And there are many different aspects to learn. I'm not just saying martial arts as the physical aspect of martial arts, but also, just basically the philosophical and some of the other things that you've learned about life. So, keep that in mind. And the reason why I've reverted back to this older system of 4 sashes is simply because I get more out of watching people realize their own personal development in the martial arts incrementally as they come in for their lessons, that they don't really feel that they need sash color changes so often. And they're hooked on the personal development and the actual personal gratification of knowing that they're getting better and better at what it is that they're practicing, and they notice it themselves. There doesn't really need to be any outside recognition, and there really is no greater reward than to be able to feel the changes and experience the changes personally, rather than somebody saying, hey, yeah, you got that, here you go, here's this. So just keep that in mind. And again, that's not for everybody. There are still other systems of grading out there that a lot of people use. And at some point I may go back to a more multifaceted or colored ranking system for the general public if I, again, cater to all different kinds of personalities. But for now, I'm really happy doing what I'm doing, and so are the students that train with me. So that's all I have to say for now. Take care, and until next time, continue to train hard, but also continue to train smart.